And I see by the notice on my screen, we are live and streaming on YouTube. So I'd like to welcome everyone to Prescott's Town Council meeting for Tuesday, February 16th, 2021. It is 6:02, so we'll begin the meeting this evening. Start off with item 1, tonight's call to order, and then move immediately to 2, approval of tonight's agenda. Recommendation there reads that the agenda for the council meeting of February 16th, 2021 be approved as presented. Could I have a mover, please? Moved by Councilor Ostrander, seconded by Councilor McConnell. Any comments on tonight's agenda? Other than that, it's way too long. So with that, I'll move to the motion. All in favor? Motion is carried. Item 3, declarations of interest. Any declarations from members of council this evening? Seeing none, 4 presentations, 5 delegations, nothing under either item tonight. So it takes us to 6.1. That's minutes of our previous council meetings. One item there, of course, is just the council minutes from our meeting on February 1st, 2021. Recommendation reads that the council minutes of February 1st, 2021 be accepted as presented. Could I have a mover, please? Moved by Councilor Young, seconded by Councilor Burton. Any comments on that set of minutes distributed in your agenda packages? Seeing none, then I'll proceed with the vote. All those in favor? Motion is carried. 7, communications and petitions. We have nothing under that section again tonight. Takes us to 8, consent reports. And as always, all the matters listed under the consent reports are considered routine and will be enacted with a single motion. If anyone does want to split up any or all of these 3 items, if they could let us know now. Otherwise, I'll proceed with asking for a mover under that recommendation. Okay, so the recommendation reads that all items listed under the consent report section of the agenda be accepted as presented. Could I have a mover, please? Moved by Councilor Ostrander, second by Councilor Shankar. Any discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor? Motion is carried. 9, under committee reports. We have nothing tonight under committee reports because we've had no committee meetings. So move right along. 10, mayor's portion of tonight. Couple real quick announcements for some meetings I did attend over the last couple of weeks. One of note was a cross-border mayors meeting held on February 4th. That's that group of border mayors in Ontario, the urban areas closest to border crossings, such as what we have here at the Prescott-Ogdensburg Bridge. This group's been set up by the mayor of Sault Ste. Marie, Christian Provenziano. We've had a number of meetings now over the last 6-7 months. This was our second meeting with Minister of Public Safety, Bill Blair. Did get to some great discussion from Minister Blair on federal actions with regards to the border. Got some really had the chance to give our feedback as well. It was a good hour and a half to 2-hour meeting, and I really can't say enough for that group of mayors and Minister Blair for being so good to come to the table with us and get our feedback on issues in relation to the international border during COVID. So wanted to thank him again. We did get a bit of a peek into what's actually been publicly announced the last couple of weeks by the Prime Minister with regards to added security at the land border crossings. If I can make my mouth work right tonight. And that has been announced the last little while. So it's good to see that security stepped up because we do have the variants of COVID-19 out there right now. So it's nice to see that actually taking place. So further updates on that as they're warranted by from the group. We are meeting on a semi-regular basis on that. Wanted to note joint services meeting earlier this month, the first Wednesday. Good meeting. One impact that will be coming back to us in terms of the budget is as the group did agree unanimously to establishing some new ambulance services for the Athens area to deal with some response times issues we've had there for quite a lengthy period of time. So that will be a budget impact that will come back to our group. We're having a special budget meeting of JSC that will likely firm up all of the joint services numbers. And I don't have that date in front of me right now, but it's fairly imminent. We did add it to the schedule. I think it's the March the 3rd, if that is a Wednesday. So that will close off the budget discussions, hopefully with joint services. But just to note for everyone, there will be that one addition. And we did have a meeting with our partners in Brockville and Gananoque last week, again on the JSC negotiation discussions. We formulated our basic main talking points for the first meetings, and we set that first meeting tentatively with the counties next Wednesday, but we're waiting on confirmation of that from the United Counties. So that is moving forward, and we'll have updates back to council on that as we begin meeting. That's it for me tonight. So I'll move on to item 11, and as always, alphabetically start with Councillor Burton. Leanne, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor Todd. Nothing for committees, but I did want to do a shout out to our operations department and removing the snow that is ongoing for the last couple of days. It really shows their dedication. They're out there most of the night removing the snow and making sure our streets and our sidewalks are safe for our residents. So thank you to our operations department and our staff. That's all for me. Thank you.
Great point. Well said. Unfortunately, the guys did such a great job in the snow, and the reward was more snow. So it's good work, though, all around. We've got the best public works department in the area when it comes to snow removal and pretty much everything else. So thanks very much for that. Councillor Jansman, please.
The BIA met last week, and as I mentioned last month, despite this pandemic, they are a very active, progressive group, and they're growing and they're thinking forward. And so I just wanted to compliment that group for that. The planning committee is meeting actually tomorrow evening for the first time in a while. So I will report on that next time. And that's it for me. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Jansman. Councillor McConnell, please.
Thank you, Mayor Todd. I'll keep it short tonight. The only thing I'll mention is that the library is now open again to public traffic, thanks to us being in a green zone. What that means is you can actually go in, browse for a book, and take it with you. You don't have to call in from outside or pick it up at the door anymore. I think we are limited to about 10 people in the library. You can also go in and use the computers. But the protocols that are put in place, and the girls will explain those to you when you go in, have to be followed. Thank you very much. Oh, the hours, they will be 11 to 5 on Monday through Friday. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much, Lee, for that. It's good to see the library opening. And we did discuss that briefly at our emergency services group on Friday. So we know they've got some great protocols there to make sure everything's handled safely with the reading materials and the computers. So great to hear that they're reopened again with other services. Councillor Ostrander, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. Not too much at my end. I see that we're having interviews on Thursday for our part-time fire chief position, so I'm looking forward to that. And here it is, the first day that I could take my stick and puck over to the rink, and it's a foot of snow on it. So I guess that's good news and bad news. That's it for me. Thanks.
Thanks very much, Mike. Councillor Shankar, please.
Thank you. Nothing to report, no meetings. So everything's going well. Just big shout out to the community of Prescott. You know, we're in a green zone, so that's good. That means everyone's doing their part in this pandemic. So let's keep that going. Thanks.
Absolutely. Good to be open again. And Councillor Young, please.
Nothing to report, Mayor Todd. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Ray. So moving on then, thanks everyone for the reports this evening. So we'll move on to item 12, and we have quite a number of reports under 12. So 12.1 is staff report 16-2021. Information items, and this has been brought back. I believe these are all, and correct me if I'm wrong here, Councillor McConnell, these were the items that you asked to bring back for, was it last week, or is this a roundup of other items on there as well? Lindsay, you can just comment on that briefly before I open it up for discussion.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair. Councillor McConnell, I believe these were the 6 items you had highlighted from the council information package last council meeting. So the report just offers a little bit of information on each of those items. And then if council wishes for any of the items, if they want to move a motion of support or resolution, that's totally up to you. Thank you.
Thanks very much. And so we just run through the items really quickly, one by one. So the first one is that volunteer center of St. Lawrence Rito with that fire hydrants competition fundraiser, I guess, that they're proposing. I don't know if we need an absolute decision on this tonight, but that's there. And if anyone wanted to speak to it, now's the time. Any comments, questions on that one? Councilor McConnell, please.
Thanks, Mayor Todd. When that was first brought through there, either I read it wrong or I didn't read it thoroughly enough, but I noticed in the information that we have this week that it's not just a freebie on our part. By donating them a fire hydrant, we're actually expected to pay for having the fire hydrant painted or hiring somebody to paint it. That puts a little different slant on the subject. And based on that, I'm not sure that I would be willing to go ahead with it. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments on that item? Be interesting to see what feedback they get overall from municipalities, because there is a lot of extra hassle there with hiring artists and so forth. So if no one else wants to comment on that, we can let that one go for now and see where they're at with this, if they have more information to provide us in the weeks to come. Second was that resolution of support regarding the reversal of the Ontario Fire College closures. I think it's been outlined really good here in the report from our clerk tonight. Any comments on this, and is there a willingness to pass a motion in support of this resolution, I guess would be the key question. Councilor McConnell?
Thanks again, Mayor Todd. Staff checked with our fire chief, which would be the sensible thing to do, and he's in support of Augusta's resolution. So I think we should support the chief and our fire department and ask staff to prepare a resolution for us to pass at our next meeting. That would be my preference there.
Everybody else okay with that? Seems like a very good common sense thing to do to help out here. So, okay. So we'll go to the end of this, and then maybe we'll have a motion for staff direction just on what's decided. So there's item 2. Another is a resolution of support regarding municipal drainage and coordination with CN. I remember this came up. This was, I think, the last meeting as well, right, Councilor McConnell? And
it was
comment on this one as well. This is another possibility of passing a motion in support of the resolution from Municipality of Southwest Middlesex. So open it up for comments. Lee, did you want to go first?
Sure, I will, since I brought it up. As you know, we have a very wet eastern end of our community. On the north side of the 401, not just us, but Edwardsburg, Cardinal Township as well. Some of that water is being held back by the CN rail line and has been for probably 150 years or more. If there's a possibility of getting them to help drain that, any dollars, I think we should pursue it. I suspect likely there is no possibility there. It would have been done before, but it might be worth looking into. I wouldn't spend a lot of time on it though.
It's a good point. It's a little timely as well, because I was contacted by CN last week, I guess, and I referred that on to Nathan, and he's taken the initiative and gotten in. They basically asked for contact information with the municipalities. So we do have them reaching out to us. It's not to say that at the end of the day they're going to listen to us, but at least we do have someone we can open a discussion with there. So I think that's a good other asset as well. So with that one, is everyone willing to bring that back as well to pass that resolution of support at our March 1st meeting as well? Seeing a lot of nodding heads, so I think we're good on that one. And the next one is a resolution of support regarding the increased municipal insurance rates. This is again came out a little while ago. We've had that ongoing discussion. It's been everywhere with municipal budgets this year, insurance rates going up 20, 30% or so. And then there's also the joint and several liability. That's a long standing issue there that we're unfortunately very familiar with at the larger regional municipal level. That's been a topic of discussion for a while now. So this is another one that we could consider bringing a motion of support in support of a resolution from the municipality of Grey Highlands. So open it up for discussion on that. Councilor McConnell, you did bring this one up before. Did you want to make a quick comment on this?
I did, Brad, thank you very much. Yeah, to me, that's just a no-brainer. As you mentioned, municipalities are really getting nailed with insurance, and unfairly, I think, a lot of the insurance that we are getting nailed with when there is a problem should be up to the individual insurers and individual property owners. But they look at the municipalities having essentially pockets that have no bottom in them. So they're very, very deep. And I think we should be hitting the provincial government with this issue every time we have the opportunity. I know you have run into it in your dealings provincially as well. And I think we should just keep the pressure on.
Sure, definitely sounds good from my perspective. Anyone else have a comment or question on that one? Is that something that we're willing to support as well and bring back with a resolution supporting? Mike, did you have a comment or are you just supporting it?
Yeah, just that it's come up a few times in recent times with us about the liability aspect. And of course, the old saying is if you can't find somebody to sue City Hall. So that's kind of where that comes from, I think. And I do think we need to look at it a little closer. If we're, I guess you could say, that vulnerable, then maybe we need to reinforce it a bit and show that we're backing it and not backing away from it, type thing. Thanks.
Thank you. Any other comments on that? Are we willing to go ahead with that one as well? We'll add that one to the list. Seeing all good. And the last one was another motion, this one from the town of Bracebridge, calling on the feds in the province to provide municipal funding opportunities for shovel-ready and prioritized projects under municipal asset management plans. So again, pretty straightforward one. Councilor McConnell, did you want to comment on this before I open it up?
Yeah, that pretty much nails us on the head as far as looking for financing for a shovel-ready project, and we all know what that shovel-ready project is. So if this pushes anybody's buttons and gets them off their seat, I would say that we should support that. I think likely with the COVID thing, some of these things have just gone on the back burner. Everybody's dealing with other things, but as we go through summer and spring and people get vaccinated, I think the governments are going to be looking for projects to boost the economy, to kickstart the economy. We have a project, and I think we should do everything to make sure that the governments know that we have a project.
Very well said. Other comments, questions on that one? Are we good to add that motion to the list as well? So seeing a lot of nods. So I guess the motion would read that we direct staff to bring back the resolution in reversal of the Ontario Fire College closure, municipal drainage matters, increased municipal insurance rates, future grant application. Or did I miss one? Did I miss that one? The future grant application deadlines. I'm sorry, I did miss the one in the middle from the Township of Mattachuan. Longer turnaround times for funding submission dates, pandemic. That's a real good common sense one too. That any comments on that, or can we safely add that one to the list as well? Councilor McConnell, this was one of yours as well, I believe. So any comment on that you'd like to make before we move on?
Very, very shortly. We're not a huge metropolitan area like some that have an awful lot of employees and can just say to somebody, go and do this. And there's an awful lot of them. Municipalities that are smaller than we are, that are getting by with one or two people in the head office, and I think we should support those. And who knows, it may come back to help us someday as well.
Absolutely. Any other comments on that one? So anyway, so the direction would be that future grant application deadlines and infrastructure funding. So what is that? 5 total or 6?
5.
5. So Lindsay, you've got all that from there. So any further comments, and can I ask someone to make that motion, please? Moved by Councilor McConnell, seconded by Councilor Young. Any final discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor? Motion is carried. Thanks, everyone, and thanks to Councilor McConnell for bringing that forward. I will note just briefly, and we're just kind of working on some ideas there. Our clerk did look into this as well. When Councilor McConnell did bring forward the information package last time around, how big it had gotten, and it really has gotten huge in the last little while. So I talked to Lindsay just today about possibly setting up a correspondence portion of the agenda where we could call council's attention. Like, you'd still get the same information package with everything, but the correspondence section would be the more like direct items, such as the direct request with the volunteer center and things like that. So we try to separate the important ones, so that way we don't have the important ones lost in the shuffle, but you'd still have everything else under the information portion. So we're just trying to work on a concept for that, and just to try to work with Councilor McConnell's good feedback on this at the last meeting. So hopefully make the information items a little more easy to digest. So more on that as we move forward. Maybe have that even implemented for our next meeting. I do want to thank Councilor McConnell for raising that. So moving along, 2.12.2 under staff tonight is staff report 17-2021. That's the draft encroachment agreement for 254 King Street West. That's the Seaway Valley Pharmacy. Recommendation reads that council approve the encroachment agreement for 254 King Street West, subject to the conditions outlined in report 17-2021, and that the bylaw be brought forward to the council meeting of March 1st, 2021 for final review and consideration. Could I ask for a mover, please? Moved by Councilor Burton, seconded by Councilor Ostrander. And with that, before we open it up for discussion, I'll turn it over to Mr. Merriman for a quick update on what we're doing here. It's basically all about an accessibility ramp, I believe. You're muted, John.
Yeah. Sorry about that, Mr. Chair. Got to remember to shut that mic back on. Anyways, yeah, this is the final step. The ramp itself is already built, which is fairly common to issue a conditional permit, providing that the person that's installing the ramp understands that council at any time has the right to ask for the ramp to be removed because it is encroaching upon city property. So, like I say, this is the final step. The ramp is very good. It's actually the proper size and everything else. And other than a couple notes that Councillor McConnell caught on the fact that maybe it wasn't a movie theater prior to 78 or something like that, everything else was good. I just took what the person had told me. But yeah, it's a good feed. I mean, especially for the any place becoming accessible is good, but it's especially important when it's a pharmaceutical company.
Absolutely. And I guess open up for discussion now. Any comments or questions from the group? Councilor McConnell.
Thanks, Mayor Todd. I'm just curious, like we've got, what is it, three ramps on King Street now? One at the Bank Montreal, one at Zen's Inn, and this one here. And we're going to wind up with one at the museum, I believe, as well, very shortly. But when you have a building with such a low step, like the drugstore, do we not give consideration to, okay, why are you putting a step outside? Why aren't you adjusting the front of the building for a ramp? Because it's not like some of those buildings like Zen's Inn where you're coming up a couple of feet. We're talking a matter of inches here. And there is a fair amount of space inside the front door of that building that could have accommodated that. What goes into the decision to put one outside rather than have them alter the business?
Yeah, good question. I'm assuming it's Building Act and Accessibilities Act, but Mr. Merriman, any comment on that?
Yeah, the big thing is when everyone requests, to begin with, it comes as a request from the business that's involved. When it becomes involved, we take a look at it, usually, always with operations and everyone else at the town to make sure that it's not going to affect any things in relation to sidewalk cleaning and stuff like that. If it was pushed inside the store, it would actually decrease the amount of store space they had. And in general, we're not looking to decrease the amount of store spaces people have. Although it was short, that just means that the ramp itself was actually shorter than what would normally be needed. If you take a look at the one that's like at Zen's Inn, it's almost twice as long as the one that's at Seaway Pharmacy. And like I say, we make sure that operations is involved, make sure that sidewalk fits and all that sort of stuff. So it's just fitting it in. If town council wants to change the policy where we encourage them to put it inside the store first, we will be more than happy as staff to take that back to them and tell them that we're not interested in encroachment agreements anymore.
Any further comments from council this evening? Councillor Young and then Councillor Burton, please.
I think one of the issues, Sean, is it not, the ramp can only be a certain number of degrees. It can go, what, 1 inch per foot or something?
Correct.
Something like that. So that's what determines, I guess, in part, how they want to go with that. And if we're going to, I guess if we're going to think about doing that to other people, we're going to have to deal with it before anybody else with the museum.
If Matt could probably remind us on that, but that wasn't the plan, was it not, for accessibility and on the opening of the building?
Yes, absolutely. And that application should be coming within the next month or so.
Councillor Burton, please.
Thank you, Mayor Todd. I think it's important to make any business accessible to our residents and tourists that visit. I mean, this is 2021, and we want to make sure that anybody can be able to go into any of our stores to shop. So definitely something that any business should consider having is making their business accessible. So thank you.
Thank you. Absolutely. Couldn't agree more with that. Any further comments from anyone this evening? The only comment I would have on this, I want to start off by thanking Seaway Valley Pharmacy for doing this. Zen is the next one. They're doing this as well. We've had BMO was last year, the year before. So it's good to see, because we do have a lot of downtown storefronts that are old enough that they've all got that opening step, which I guess at one time was good when the road was dirt and you didn't want things to garbage and whatever and dirt to just kind of blow into your store. But obviously that's become a real issue for accessibility in older downtowns, and you see it everywhere. The only concern I would have with this is just the spacing concerns of all of it, because at some point, as Councillor Burton rightly mentioned, all our businesses should be moving to that accessible standard. And it just makes me wonder, just in terms of room to accommodate the ramps and room to accommodate these areas without, we're going to lose some trees, as we already have here. We're probably going to even have to relocate some light standards at some point. And it's all, not complaining about any of that, but just want to make sure we're planning out and we're ready for it, because I don't want to accommodate the early adopters and then have to tell somebody down the road, hey, we don't quite have enough room for you. So I'm not sure if we need to look at a larger scheme for the downtown on this to make sure we can accommodate everyone or not. I'm assuming there probably are some other municipalities that have done something similar, but I'll just ask Sean if there's any merit to doing something like that, and if it is something to be concerned about at all.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the way it's working right now, we approach operations, and the secret is, before we even approach operations, we have to make sure that the ramp itself, although it's encroaching on our property, it doesn't encroach in front of anyone else's property. So anyone that would be denied in the future would be because they had too small a storefront to begin with due to the step, which unfortunately those people, there was no way to fit it in, unfortunately, no matter what. Like I said, we do the very best we can to find accessibility, but it's better to have 90% of the businesses accessible and accept that 10% may never be accessible without some major building structural changes where, like Mr. McConnell said, maybe it goes inside the store, but it would definitely eat up their footprint inside to try to bring a ramp inside.
I know we talked at one time about temporary options as well that could be put down for hours of operation that wouldn't be as, permanent encroachments that might be able to. So I guess there's other options that's well beyond the context of the report and what we're discussing tonight, but just good to know that we're doing the best to accommodate these businesses. And unfortunately, as you say, some are, it's just a consequence of dealing with heritage buildings that weren't designed for this. So great to that we can accommodate, and we've got businesses that are forward thinking enough to take this on and do these projects. So, but I did have to mention that. Councillor Burton, another comment, please.
Thank you. Maybe we should be looking at a ramp accessible policy to make sure that, we are not getting into like longer ramps, shorter ramps. We should definitely look at something that's standardized that would fit our buildings downtown, because we're talking about the downtown right now. I mean, there are other businesses in the north end are accessible. So maybe we should definitely look at a policy that can standardize our ramps.
Excellent point. And I see Matthew's unmuted himself, so I'm sure he's ready to weigh into this. But there's also where we are looking at that downtown, the design guidelines and the streetscaping as something possible where it could be supporting on the budget this year. And I would think we could include something like that, so we make sure we make the town accessible. So Matt, did you have a comment on that and how we could go forward with this?
Certainly, I think there's two types of ramps that we can talk about. One is the permanent, and that would be definitely governed under the building code, where you can go 1 inch per in height over 12 inches in length. So really, it's governing how far we can go there. But then there's also some guidelines around temporary ramps, and I think that's where we would look to, I believe, the Ministry of Seniors and Accessibility, because they have some really great ideas of how to make older downtowns fit that when perhaps a permanent ramp isn't a solution or able to go through that. So there's a lot of great ideas out there, and I sat in on the minister's talk a couple of years ago at a conference, and some fantastic ideas around being able to do temporary solutions where permanent ones aren't possible. So I think it's very much something that we need to take a look at and be able to really endorse as part of our downtown design guidelines.
Sounds good. Any follow-up to that, Leanne? Is that?
Oh, definitely. I think we need to, maybe staff direction to look into different accessibility ramps for our downtown. And accessibility is in a few different ways, right? I mean, you're talking, strollers and walkers and different things like that. So definitely looking at our options for downtown. Thank you.
Let's take care of this motion, and then if you want to put a separate motion there for staff direction, so we could tie that into to our overall planning in the downtown and get something back from staff's at work. Matt, Sean, is that work is something we can aim towards? Because anything we can do to reinforce that we want to be accessible in the town of Prescott, particularly in the downtown commercial sector, I think is very, very positive and something worth doing. So if everyone's okay with that, we'll just tie off this part of the report, and then we'll move on to that staff direction. Any further comments on the motion that's on the table right now with regards to the encroachment agreement? Seeing none, I'll return to the motion then. All in favor? Motion is carried. Thanks, everyone. So Councillor Burton, if you wanted to make that motion for staff direction here.
Yes, I will. Staff direction to create an accessibility report for any kind of ramp that we can use in any of the businesses downtown would be very helpful.
Okay, sounds good. So staff, you're clear on the direction there, just to get us some more information and make sure we're accessible as we can be. Anyone care to second that motion? Councillor Ostrander. So it's moved by Councillor Burton, seconded by Councillor Ostrander. We look at the creation of a policy and do some research on accessibility and ramps in the downtown core. So all those in favor? Motion is carried. Thank you. And on to the next encroachment agreement. This is going to sound very similar. Next door neighbor downtown. So it's staff report 18-2021. That's item 12.3 in the agendas. The draft encroachment agreement for 232 King Street West. That's Zen Zin. Recommendation reads that council approve the encroachment agreement for 232 King Street West, subject to the conditions outlined in report 18-2021, and that the bylaw be brought forward to the council meeting of March 1st, 2021 for final review and consideration. Could I have a mover, please? Moved by Councillor Young, seconded by Councillor Burton. Turn it over again to Mr. Merriman. Pretty much second verse, same as the first, Sean?
Pretty much. The only thing to bring you notice to this one, due to the size of the sidewalk and the width of the sidewalk at that point, we could unfortunately only accommodate the bare minimum for the width for the building code. The building code says it must be a minimum of 900 millimeters wide, and it's just that. Unfortunately, due to the sidewalk equipment that we use for clearing and other issues, it just could not be any wider. But I was very impressed that Mr. Davies still wanted to put it in to help with all the accessibility he could. It may not be perfect for every single type of scooter or anything else that's out there, but it's certainly going to be a lot better than having nothing.
Thanks very much, Sean. So open it up for discussion. Members of council this evening, any comments, questions on this pending agreement? Seeing no comments, so I will call the vote. All in favor? Motion is carried. Thanks, everyone. And we're on to item 12.4. That's staff report 19-2021, Digital Main Street Program Extension, Opportunity and Update. Recommendation here reads that council approve a 1-month extension to the Digital Main Street Program Coordinator position and subsequent funding support through the Grenville CFDC Community Economic Development Funding Program. And this is for the period of March 1st to March 31st, 2021. Could I ask for a mover, please? Moved by Councillor Young, seconded by Councillor Ostrander. And with that, I think, Dana, this one's yours, if I'm correct, without skipping back in my agenda. So Ms. Valentine, please take us away into the report.
Thank you, Mayor Todd, through you to council. So we've got some really exciting news. The program has been really impactful throughout the region and Ontario, and there's been some new federal funding provided to CFDCs, which gave them the opportunity to provide to municipalities to extend their coordinator positions for the Digital Main Street program for an additional month. Ours was actually due to end on February 26th, as per the original terms of the agreement and the funding that we graciously received through the OBIA Digital Main Street program. So this really ties in perfectly. It would take us through to March 31st, which actually aligns with the end date of some of the other programs that are in place for the businesses. So it would really be great to still have that coordinator in place to be able to assist the businesses with the uptake and also with completing their grant funding and reporting requirements. They'll also require some ongoing assistance with that. And we're also looking at developing a number of new programs for the next month as we extend this, some webinars, some podcasts, basically just some resources that are going to be directed to all businesses, regardless of whether they were eligible for the Digital Main Street program, really to provide them with some ongoing support in helping explore digital technologies, maybe some online e-commerce platforms, just general marketing through social media. There's a whole multitude of things that they could be exploring that our coordinator will be also assisting them with over the next month. And so we're basically looking for council approval for that funding today. There's no salary requirement on the part of council, but there would be an additional, a nominal cost for some of the programming that we are proposing. But the other piece of good news to this is we've received an extension of the Digital Main Street program itself. So if there are funds still available, which I'm anticipating we will have some funds available that we could allocate to those programs, we can also extend that until March 31st. So again, it really all aligns well together, and we're really pleased to receive this opportunity. And Justin has been a huge benefit to the business community. The response that we're getting from our businesses to him directly, and the support that he's been able to offer them above and beyond even the Digital Main Street program has been really fantastic. And it was concerning to see that February 26th date looming, and the potential of having to terminate that contract position. So we're very hopeful council will approve this extension and the additional funding support that's been offered to us through the CFDC. And just also as part of this report, I won't go into a whole lot of details because it's all there in writing, but I did provide just some updates on the program itself, some of the engagement numbers that we've had throughout the partners, which include Prescott, Augusta, and Edwardsburg Cardinal. And as I mentioned, the businesses from all areas have been very pleased with the results. And then the report also highlights some of those ongoing activities that the coordinator will continue to implement. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Great report and some good information there, and some data on the applications and so forth. So open it up for comments and questions. I see Councillor Young.
Thank you, Brett. I did have one downtown merchant approach me about this program. Their comment was this was the best thing that the council and the BIA has done for the downtown in a number of years. So that's quite an endorsement of the program.
Thank you very much, Councillor Young. Other comments, questions? Councillor Burton, please.
Thank you, Mayor Todd. I think it's important to continue this program. It's working for our businesses. And like Councillor Young just mentioned, I've gotten several compliments on what we're doing and how we're promoting this and the great work involved in this. So I think it's important to support it and continue it. And whatever we can do for our businesses is important to continue this as well. So I'm going to definitely support this. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Burton. Other comments, questions? Seeing nothing else, I just did want to add, I've talked to a few of the participants as Ray was mentioning, and they've been very enthusiastic about it. I know one person that got their storefront up and running and had a sale within, I think, the first 10 minutes of being online. That was really the first venture that particular business had really taken into an online economy. So we talk a lot about accessibility, and that is absolutely vital, to physically being able to get into the stores. But if you're not online, you're not accessible for another reason, and it really does restrict your ability to do business. So I'm really happy that we've done so much for this. We were one of the pioneers in Eastern Ontario with this, with Katarina's and the work that the Smith School of Business at Kingston started there. So I'm quite proud of us being pioneers there, and it's great to see it going on if this passes this evening, and I would imagine that it will. So great work all around here, and good kudos for the entire Prescott community, both at Town Hall and of course with our downtown merchants doing all they can right now to thrive under these new circumstances with COVID. So thanks so much for this, Dana, and thanks to Justin for all the work there as well. Any final comments on this before I call the question? Seeing none, I will call the vote. All those in favor? Motion is carried. Thanks, folks. And we're on to 12.5, and that's tonight's portion of the budget presentation. We're dealing with revenue, fees, and taxation here. Matthew, will you be sharing your screen moving forward with the presentation for this portion of the night?
Yes, I will, if you're okay with that.
Absolutely.
All right. So hopefully at this point, you're able to see my screen. Okay, very good. So this evening, we're going to talk about the budget timelines, the tourism and economic development budgets, fees and revenue, taxation, as well as just providing an overview of where we are to date. So this is our fifth meeting discussing the budget. Tonight, we kind of put aside the expense side for a few minutes and focus on the revenue side. March 1st at our next meeting will be an opportunity to take a look at both of our operational budget as well as our project budget, which we'll be discussing later this evening, and seeing how they align with not only our strategic plan, but our service delivery review as well. So from the expense budget side, we just have economic development and tourism as the last two to look at. In 2020, the economic development budget was $218,000 approximately. The projection for this year is about $198,000. And the projection for, or the budget for 2021 is a small increase to $234,000. Really the increase there is the Digital Main Street project and that having offsetting funding that was we originally started that was going to go to the end of February. And then the one that you just approved just a moment ago will go into the end of March. So really there's an offsetting amount in revenue that you'll see a little bit later. And then that increase in to the expense side. So really the ECDEV budget doesn't cover just ECDEV, but it also covers the our contributions to the EORN project from approximately 8 or 9 years ago that is continuing to be paid. I believe 2023 is our last year to pay that. Then it covers the EORN project for the 5G. With that started, our contribution started in 2020, and that's approximately $6,500. And then there's another $17,000 in there that is our contribution towards the St. Lawrence Economic Development Corridor. So there's quite a number of things that come out of that budget, and so that's what you're seeing here. And really the only difference between budget and budget is that additional Main Street program. Tourism budget was budgeted for $194,000 in 2020. We'll have spent approximately $90,000 in 2020 and $175,000 for 2021. And really the what we're looking at there is if we don't run the Lighthouse program or the Taste of Prescott, that we would decrease the expenses, and then there's an offset to the revenue of a similar or same amount. So all told, a decrease in the expenses of 0.5%, and then a significant increase over the current year because we were able to not do quite a bit of those items in 2020 due to COVID. And so planning on retaining those budgets for 2021, but certainly it's up for discussion. So I'll just pause there. Is there any comments, questions, or concerns through the mayor?
Councillor Young, please.
Matthew, going back to the 175,434, have we bumped that up to include things like Taste of Prescott and maybe some of the other things that we weren't able to do in 2020?
So we have taken out the Taste of Prescott as well as the Lighthouse, but everything else is still included in there. And
Okay.
if we wanted to put those back in, then there would be an increase to revenue as well. So it doesn't really change the bottom line all that much, but.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Anything further from that section? Questions on that section of the presentation? Seeing no, so please proceed, Mr. CAO.
Okay, so next we're going to concentrate on the fees and revenues. So there's administrative fees, protective services, transportation, environmental, health and social services, parks and recreation, and finally planning and development. So from our administrative revenue side, we had been notified in the fall that our Ontario Municipal Partnership Fund would be increasing by $36,000. That was as per the notice, and that is both good news and bad news. Obviously, good news, we get additional revenue, but bad news from the perspective that we continue from a social economic standpoint to fall behind the median when it comes to the rest of Ontario. So it's incumbent upon us to do things like the Digital Main Street program and continue to grow both our businesses and our residents to be able to really help us move forward and grow the town. Marriage license fees, obviously not a lot in 2020. Our thought here is that 2020 and 2021 may look very similar when it comes to marriage, lottery, ceremonies, death certificates, things like that. So really that was the concept that we used. So if there was a reduction going into 2020, or that we saw in 2020, that we moved that over unless we had better information. Dividends, that's from the Rio St. Lawrence utilities. And so while we didn't receive a dividend in 2020, we're still able to record the increase in investment. So it just becomes a larger receivable as opposed to an amount that we received in cash. Short-term investments, I've talked about this quite a bit in the previous time. And so in 2020, we had a budget of $100,000. In the course of 2020, when we hit March, the interest rate went from 2.45% to 0.95%. And then from there, it's decreased even further to, I believe, 0.2%. So you can see that it's certainly decreased, and there's an effect of that. We do have COVID related funding that we're able to use for expense and revenue offsets. And so it's those types of things, such as the marriage lottery, the short-term investments, things like that, that we're suggesting that we would use that COVID funding for. We received $264,000, I believe, $900 or $266,900 in 2020. I'm projecting that we'll use approximately $160,000. We received an additional $53,000 in 2021, which when paired to the amount remaining would allow us to allocate $159,000 to offset revenue decreases in this year. And you can see just when we're taking a look at some of these items, such as the short-term interest, $90,000 alone would be what we would be looking to offset there. So a couple of other things that we're looking at are obviously tax certificates. We saw a few more of those go through this year as we saw more houses turnover, and as well as just certification of oaths seem to decrease this year. So anywhere where we knew that there was going to be a possibility that we weren't going to see a rebound in that revenue, or that we know, such as the short-term interest, that we know it's not going to rebound, then we're realizing that in the budget. But we do have the COVID funding that we could use to offset if council wishes. From there, we move to protective services. So a large portion of the increase in this, you can see it's approximately $30,000, is the renegotiation of the aid agreements with Edwardsburg Cardinal as well as Augusta. There were some one-time items in 2020 that we received revenue for that aren't expected to continue to 2021, but you're seeing the effect of those aid agreements there. Police, we certainly saw a decrease in the criminal reference check revenue that is done by our detachment of the OPP, and then we receive that money to the town. So we're not expecting that to climb again in 2021, as there's just a reduction in the number of volunteer opportunities, as well as people changing jobs and that sort of thing. So there again, we're taking a look at it and saying, what is the effect of COVID? Is it likely to increase? And for police checks in particular, it's not likely. Protective services, that's our licenses and fees. And so you can see there that we're taking a fairly conservative approach. There was a couple of one-time revenue items that we received, such as the cost sharing for the lights that are up by Canadian Tire and Independent Grocer that are being effective in keeping transports from parking in those lots. As well as in the building side, there was quite a bit of one-time recovery in 2020, and that was due to Mr. Merriman working with Merrickville Wolford to help support them through their changeover in CBOs. So not expecting, it may continue in 2021, but not budgeting for it. And there is an increase in cost related to that. So we're making sure that if we're including something in revenue, that it also be included in expense and vice versa. If we're not including it in revenue, then we're not including it in expense. So we fully feel that that's a fair and effective way to do it. And then finally, the provincial offenses is a portion of revenue that we receive through joint services at the United Counties. And you can see that our budget for 2020 was 31,000. We're projected to receive approximately 15, and our 2021 budget from the United Counties portion would be just shy of 15,000. So there are, again, talking about the other places where we could offset and use that COVID funding would be the 16,000 from budget to budget for provincial offenses revenue. We take a look at transportation, not a lot of changes here. The small change in the OSIF funding allocation from year over year, and so making sure that that's clearly reflected. Waste collection, I think when we talked about approving the new waste management contract, that I did mention that we're receiving, or we're seeing an increase in the volume of garbage. And so therefore we have included that in the revenue side of the budget. And that's just through the sale of garbage bags. So we are seeing that increase. And so we've included that in there as well. And then waste diversion is the majority of it comes from a provincial grant we receive for 50% of the costs for recycling. So all hold there that the $28,000, almost $29,000 in waste collection is offsetting the approximately $60,000 increase that we had in waste management that we discussed at our last meeting. Health and social services. So the health center, as we discussed previously, that we're hoping to have the sale by early in the first, or late in the first quarter, early in the second quarter. So therefore we wouldn't be generating any additional rent revenue past that sale date. And then St. Lawrence Lodge is an amount that we receive that was to support part of the debt payment and debenture payments that we adorned as part of the agreement to support St. Lawrence Lodge. And of the $240,000 that we pay, we receive approximately $80,000 in reimbursement for that. So it's about $160,000 net cost, and that is expected to continue for the next couple of years as they start to run out in 2024 and 2025. So Parks and Recreation, Walker House, there was a one-time special grant in 2020 that's expected to move over to 2021. So not too much of a concern there. Marina, we predict that we would be able to break even this year if we have a similar season to last year. Also, we were able to increase our contribution to reserve to, I believe, in the $75,000 range, up from the $43,000. Pool revenue we've put in there at this moment simply because we've included in the expense side the fact that we might have the pool open, so we've included in the revenue side, but until we have a better understanding of what that might look like, then that remains an outstanding question. The community center, we've reduced it to 0 at this point. There isn't really a lot of additional cost related to running the community center, but we know that whether we have it open or not, there wouldn't be a change in the expense side, or very little. And finally, the library budget, budget to budget increases by $698, and then a increase from budget to projection, approximately $4,600. In there, I believe there's a $3,500 amount for being able to replace some of their furniture that's coming from reserve. So certainly not a concern that is increasing our particular portion of the budget, and being able to move that forward. Finally, we have planning and development. As I mentioned earlier, we took out the Taste of Prescott and the Lighthouse revenue, and also took it out of the expense side. So That way the two are even. We can always put it back in there. It wouldn't make all that much of a bottom line difference. We also made mention earlier about the increase in ECDEV revenue, and you're seeing that there as well. So all told, the 2020 budget for fees, not including property taxes, was $3.3 million. We're expecting about 3.2 for our 2020 projection. And then for 2021 budget, again, we're expecting about 3.2 if all of the things remain equal. There was a lot of increases and decreases as we went through the budget. But there again, the COVID funding, we could use $159,000 of that to help offset what we're seeing in some of those decreases. So before I move on, I'll hand it back to the mayor.
Thanks very much, Mr. Armstrong. And I guess the COVID funding question is probably the first one we could probably resolve here. So I'll open that up for discussion first off before we go back to the other topics. So the numbers, so that's what we're looking at in terms of COVID funding. That is basically the sum total of what you mentioned before.
That's correct. So that's inclusive of the amount we received in 2020 and the amount that we were allocated and have received in 2021.
Okay, so I guess that's the first question on that. I'll just pose to everyone because that's hopefully a fairly straightforward and easy budget question. Do we utilize that COVID funding for these COVID shortcomings? It seems pretty commonsensical, but who knows? So open it up for everyone and comments, questions on using COVID funding for these items specified by Mr. Armstrong. Councilor McConnell.
Thank you, Mayor Todd. I think we should use some of it, but quite frankly, given the fact that we don't know what's coming ahead, whether we're going to be getting any more anything like a COVID funding, we don't know whether there's a third wave coming. There's been a lot of conjecture about this green that we're in is going to flop back to orange in a relatively short period of time. We certainly hope that it isn't. But we've been very fortunate, I would say, in with Matthew's economic planning. The fact that we're not running a rink right now, I think is unfortunate, but it's also, we're very lucky because that's the biggest expense that we have had as a community. As you know, it costs us about $200,000 more than we take in to run a rink each year. So we've been very fortunate there. We haven't had that expense, but I would like to see us keep a chunk of that so that if there were needs in the community as the year goes on, that we would have an access to help out in that respect like we have in the past. Thank you.
Great points, Councilor McConnell. I'll just refer back to Mr. Armstrong though. So what are we spending and what's the total pool again with regards to COVID funding? Is that all of it, or what's the total figure there with what we have to spend?
So it's just shy of $320,000. And so obviously we haven't closed the 2020 books yet. So we could use up to 160,000. We might not need all of that. I shouldn't have that kind of bundled up and fully understood by the end of March. And there might be an opportunity to be able to put some of that money aside as Councillor McConnell suggested, and being able to keep it to help support our community partners. So certainly there's some opportunities there.
Okay, so I guess just general consensus tonight to support the concept, but obviously not approving it yet because we're not approving the final budget either. So is everyone okay with that, to let Mr. Armstrong work along those lines that he just mentioned and bring it back for some more, a little more deeper dive with the numbers and where we are when we get 2020 closed? I'm seeing some nodding heads. So are we good with that for COVID? So that good, Mr. Armstrong, that good for that topic?
That's great.
So, okay, and the others, I'll just open it up. I've got a few I want to mention myself here in a moment, but I'll open it up to everyone. Other comments, questions on the budget presentation? Councillor Young, please.
I just wanted to make an observation, Brett. On page 82, the interest on taxes. Last year, we budgeted $120,000 in revenue. We only received $90,900. that is not bad news. That is good news. What that means is that our past due taxes are going down. So I suspect that when we see the financials for 2020, our number will be down again this year. So that's good news.
Excellent point. Thank you. Any other comments? Councilor Shankar, please. Oh, you're muted.
Thank you. I just wanted to note some of the ceremonies that we used to perform, like the marriage ceremonies. I think Miss Castleman used to do that. Do we have anyone in house that can still provide those ceremonies, or make it so?
Lindsay does as well.
Oh, great. Okay.
Both our clerk and our deputy clerk are able to perform those. And technically, I think I'm able
good.
to as
Thank
well, but I
you.
don't think anybody wants that.
Anything further, Gary? Is that
No, that's it.
great? Thank you.
Sorry, I should say I'm in favor of spending some of that COVID money as well.
Awesome. Thank you. For the further comments on the presentation thus far, Councilor Ostrander, please.
Yes, just for Matthew, do we know what the OPP contractual number is for this year yet, or have they supplied that?
Yes, I believe it was up by about 5,600, which was approximately less than 0.5% of an increase.
Oh, that's good. Good, thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Armstrong. Thanks so much, Councilor Ostrander. Other comments on this portion of the budget? Okay, seeing done, I've just got a couple quick ones. Rito St. Lawrence, it was mentioned about the dividends, and I was contacted by a representative of the board there, Mr. George, a while back. Have we had any communication from him with regards to a presentation to council? Because I know that was talked about well before Christmas now. So, Mr. Armstrong, anything on that? Because I think it'd be good for all of us to get an update what's happening with RSL directly from the source.
Absolutely. So they're more than happy to come in at any time, and they're ready to go. It's just a matter of when in the agenda we like them. So perhaps March is a perfect time.
That'd be great. If everyone's okay with that, we would set that up for March. As it's been a little while since we've heard from RSL, so that'd be good to get that back. And the other quick comments just on the garbage with the number of like the bag sales being up. The only concern I've got there, and it is something we've taken some criticism for, and I just wanted to refer this for both Nathan and Matthew if they wanted to comment on it, because I know there was some investigation, and there was some background work being done here with regards to bag quality and Matt, geez, I thought you were holding up a garbage bag there for a moment, Matthew. Yeah, that's the exact color blue. But we did have some comments about that. There were a number that had split, and I think that was confirmed by staff. And also even the volume, the size of the bags, that was under some question too. So just wanted to give staff the chance to comment on that, because that is something of concern to some residents who are paying for those bags.
Yeah, thanks for that, through you, Mayor. Yeah, so we have been discussing this with the supplier of the bags, and they haven't really indicated anything different in the quality of the bags. I think that maybe the colder temperatures probably don't help the elasticity of them. Nonetheless, I think some of them are breaking kind of, more than we'd like to see for sure. So we have certainly indicated that to the supplier, and they've run another batch for us, and we'll get those, I think, later this week, and we'll make sure that they're better than what we have. And if not, we'll have to have more discussions with the supplier.
I'm just curious about the volume as well, because they definitely do seem to be a slightly different shaped bag more recently than were before. And I don't have an older bag to hold up to prove that or anything, but that has been a pretty standard comment. And I'm just wondering if we looked into that at all, and is it just an optical illusion, or is it something that warrants a look at? Because I know we've never looked at garbage as a way, like we obviously want to make the system as self-sustaining as possible, but it's also not something that we want to burden our residents with for added fees for extra garbage bags. So is there any truth to that, or has that been looked at yet?
I haven't looked at that in detail yet. I know that I did hear one of the staff say that they thought they're maybe 2 inches shorter than previous. So I think they're 30 by 34 or 34 by 30. So I'm not sure if there was a change. I don't know when that was made. But that, yeah, sometimes that would make people kind of put more garbage into the bags than maybe normal. But I'll research into that and certainly get back to council.
Sure. Thanks very much. And sorry to put you on the spot with that one, but that is something that's been a pretty common social media discussion. And I know staff's been fantastic in responding to that and working with residents that have then encountered some of the issues. And I guess we just have to, and I confess my ignorance on this with regards to the volume of the bags. Like, what are people getting? I don't know if we ever set a standard for that in terms of the size of the bags and so forth. I'm sure there was something with the manufacturer, but there should be something so the residents know as well what they're getting in terms of like cubic volume or whatever on the bags. And that's, so we've got a standard that we can point to when people have these sorts of issues. So
Yeah, I think again, I don't know the cubic size. It typically goes by weight as far as, I think it's 40 or 50 pounds that I think is our standard for the weight that will go into a bag. And again, the size kind of, you can start to push stuff in there and make it weigh a little bit more. But again, I think it was between it was either 40 or 50 pounds, I think was the maximum in the bag. So again, those smaller bags, you'd probably be difficult to put 50 pounds of material in there unless it was all kind of liquid.
yeah, it would explain some of the issues that people are having, but I look forward to a little more information on that. If everyone's okay, just we don't need a motion on or anything, but just a little more information on that, because we have had a lot of public commentary on the garbage situation overall, unfortunately, with recycling and garbage. But this thing with the bags has really come up the last little while. So I just want to make sure that that's covered off and residents are getting their money's worth for the bags. So thanks so much for all you've done and what you'll bring forward in the future looking at that.
Okay.
Anything else on that portion of the presentation? Okay, turn it back to Mr. Armstrong. Matt, please carry on.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. So next we're going to work on property taxation. And so just going through, as we normally would, some of the information for this year. So when we take a look at property taxes, there's always a base year that we're working with. And so for the 2017 through 2021 property taxes, it was based on the 2016 current value assessment. There was a planned reassessment to occur and new values that were to be used in 2021, but that was deferred due to COVID. And therefore, you're seeing across Ontario that there is no natural assessment growth in the values from 2020 to 2021. So when you take a look at the chart below, you're seeing that in 2016, which at that point was based on the 2012 values, that we are at 347 million. It dropped based on the 2016 by about $10 million. We didn't really get back to that 2016 amount until we hit 2019. And then we are now frozen between 2020 and 2021. So where we would have normally seen a 1 or 1.5% increase, and many municipalities see 3, 4, and 5% increases through assessment growth, we're not seeing that in 2020 versus 2021. So here again, just taking a look at the different portions of our assessment: residential, multi-res, commercial, other, and our total. You're seeing exactly how that has affected over the last 5 years, and where we're still sitting at the same amount between 2020 and 2021. So tax ratios, every year we talk about tax ratios and how that growth and the difference in growth between those various tax classes could create a disproportionate amount that they're contributing to the budget. So we talked about previously that multi-residential, the province wishes that tax ratio to work down towards 1.1. We're currently at 1.5. With no assessment change in any of those classes, then we would just leave the tax ratios the same from year to year. If we saw one class that was increasing substantially over another class, then in that case, we would take the opportunity to readjust and be able to move that forward. But with no increases, then it's pretty straightforward. So when we take a look at, and I'm just noticing that there's a slight incorrect. The first column is 2021. The second column is the first column is 2020. The second column is 2021. You can see that if we do not increase the tax rate or the levy, that our total amount from property taxes is $5.5 million. So I've also shown the tax ratios that would be used there on the right-hand side. If council wishes to implement some type of increase, then obviously those numbers would adjust by that amount. So each year we take a look to see what the change in class or in property taxes are based on each scenario that we're talking about. And so for 2020 and 2021, really there is no difference in the tax rate at this moment. So you're seeing the first three categories as not changing. What you are seeing is when you get into the commercial and industrial properties, those starting to change. And that's because the education tax rate has been reduced for those property tax, for those classes. So you can see a standard industrial property, the median value is $405,000. There would be no change in the property taxes side or the municipal property taxes, but there would be change in the education side, and therefore, that particular one, if we're talking about that specific property, their decrease would be 7.66%. And that's simply due to the decrease in the education taxes. Doesn't mean that we receive any more or less from the municipal side, but certainly the education taxes does has an effect on those commercial and industrial properties. So certainly I can take a pause at this point and hand it back over to the mayor just before we do our overview.
That's great. Thanks very much, Mr. Armstrong. So we'll open it up for comments again and start off with Councillor Young, please.
Thank you, Brett. Matthew, going back to the first page, page 90, you said the 265 million total residential assessment is the same in 2020 as it is in 2021. But what we're talking about there is building for building, not new builds, correct?
Anything that would be included on the 2020 roll by the end of the year would be there. And then in 2021, it would be only that was on the roll as of December 31st of 2020. So we always put a small amount in. I believe there's $10,000 in the budget for anything that might be new, but it's not through natural assessment growth.
Right. Okay, thank you.
Thanks very much, Ray. Other comments, questions? Oh, seeing none. So Matthew, over to you again for next steps, final steps.
Yep. So we're just going to cover off the budget overview of where we are to date. So the revenues and fees that we discussed this evening was $3.2 million. The property taxation that we just covered was $5.5 million. Payment in lieu and supplemental, so that's where the $10,000 that Councillor Young was just referring to is included, as well as our payment in lieu for things like the Coast Guard property, as well as the fort and the land registry office. So if we included the $159,000 from the COVID grant funding, our total revenue would be $9.27 million. When we go through the expenses and everything down to the joint services adjustment, we talked about up to our previous meeting. This evening, we discussed economic development and tourism, the fire chief adjustment, now that we've included the revenue side, as well as the St. Lawrence Lodge adjustment. We have received the notice of that for their 2021 budget. And so all told, we're sitting at total expenses of $9.31 million. So at this moment, without doing anything else to the budget or modifying it, inclusive of the $159,000 in COVID grant, we have a net deficit of approximately $43,400. That equates to approximately 0.78 of a property tax increase if one was to be considered. What we haven't touched yet is the inclusion of the 1% increase for infrastructure reserve contribution. That being said, we have been able to reduce where we no longer have debt payments. We're increasing the amount that we're putting into reserve. And so on our next iteration of the budget, I will report to council exactly where those amounts are going into reserve. And those debt payments, as I believe Councillor McConnell previously mentioned, should go to the infrastructure reserve. So certainly that would be the recommendation I would make as well. And we can move forward with that. So we also touched on the water and wastewater budget for 2021, and both of those have to equal zero, and approximately $500,000 in reserve contribution. So really as we continue through this process, and March 1st is our opportunity to take a step back, take a look, see where we want to go, how it's aligning with our strategic plan, as well as our service delivery review. And the question really becomes, what would council like to see in terms of, that 1% for infrastructure reserve, as well as, where we want to do, or how do we want to address the 43,400 deficit that we currently have budgeted for 2021. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Armstrong. By and large, though, very good numbers. It shows we're in a pretty good financial position, especially in the year that we're just coming off, that hopefully we will never see again in our lifetimes, with the amount of challenge and struggle that we've had. So open it up for comments, questions on the final items here, and also just in terms of budget overall. And then I'll return back to Mr. Armstrong for just a quick look at next steps. So seeing no other comments for tonight, and obviously we're not locking anything down this evening. So, and there we are with next steps. Mr. Armstrong, we've got a few items coming up at our next meeting in 2 weeks.
Thank you very much. So I have on the list for our next steps is council remuneration survey. I mentioned that we would be doing that a little bit earlier than our next meeting, but unfortunately I've just been waiting on a couple of responses, and so certainly we'll bring that forward March 1st, as well as I mentioned, those alignments with the operational budget as well as our project budget with the strategic plan and the service delivery review. But as you mentioned, I think we're in pretty good shape. It's not that we have to find hundreds of thousands of dollars in order to make the budget work. As I also mentioned when we started this process, is that we have continued to include all of the education, all of the travel, all of the repair work, as if it was going to be a normal year. And I think we can safely say 2021 will not be a normal year. And so there is an opportunity within this budget to save in specific areas, while also wanting to make sure that we retain those for future years, so that we're not burning and slashing now and then having to have a large increase going forward. So certainly I think there's an opportunity there, but I'm more than happy to review that as we move forward.
Great. Thanks again for that presentation this evening. I'll just have any final comments, or if not, we'll leave off on that portion of the budget for this evening. That looks like we're all good. So just get the screen. There we go. Thank you very much, Mr. Armstrong. So that's good for tonight. So we'll be back with the core aspects of the budget on March 1st. But under 12.6 tonight, we do have the 2021 project prioritization list with some of our capital items. This is quite an extensive list of items, but I'll turn it over to Mr. Armstrong as well to sort of take us through that. And we can get some good council feedback on where we're looking to spend those capital dollars this year. Matt?
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. So I'm just going to once again share my screen, if everyone's okay with that. Hopefully you're able to see my screen. And so we're just going to walk through each of the subcategories of the projects. We're not necessarily looking to approve every project this evening. What would be great is if there's an indication of what is a priority and what isn't, And that way, when we come to the March 1st and March 15th meetings, then we're able to start to match up where we might be able to find funds to support these projects. So just going to kind of walk through them. I'll take a pause at the end of each page and pass it over to Mayor Todd, and then we can go from there. So from a health and safety or regulatory projects, I think the request was separate them out from the other projects, and that way we can, because these are things that we have to do regardless. So fire department replacement gear, $30,000. It's to replace the life-saving gear that they wear when they're responding to their various calls, and obviously of critical importance. The other is play structures. Each year we go through, look at the deficiencies, want to make sure that there's enough budget to be able to address those deficiencies and be able to move those forward. So I'm not going to take a pause at this moment because I think we have previous agreement that they're mandatory, and we can just move on from there. So building and equipment replacement and renovations. So what we tried to do is separate anything that was a replacement or renovation of something that we currently have, as opposed to something that might be a new piece of equipment, which we'll get to later in the list. So for the pool pump and filter replacement, if we're going to run the pool, then we need to replace it in 2021. If we're not opening the pool this year, then we can wait till 2022. But as we talked about previously, the transformer that was powering that pool pump has been removed from the pole, and therefore we need to replace the pool pump simply because it doesn't have power at this moment and needs to move to a lower voltage as opposed to the 600 volts that it was at. So really we see this as being a priority, and I think we've talked about previously, opportunities for perhaps opening the pool on a shortened basis and being able to look at that this year as we move throughout the summer. But certainly it's still up for council's discussion. As you take a look at the right-hand side, you'll see council 1 through 6, and that's the feedback I received. It's just in order of receipt as opposed to any particular person or order. And so we did have one councillor identify this as being a priority for this year. The 2 other items on the list, renovations to the older portion of the town building and the replacement for the 1-ton truck, didn't rise to be a staff priority. However, the 1-ton truck really does need to be replaced in 2022 potentially, and it didn't rise to any members of council's priority. So at this point, I'll just hand it back to the mayor and we can have that discussion.
Thank you very much, Mr. Armstrong. I think I saw Councilor McConnell's hand already raised. Lee?
Oh, you did, Mayor Todd. Thank you. Actually, that was a little better explanation of this pool pump and filter replacement than I've heard before. If it's required to run the pool because of the removal of the electrical component, then it's required. It's something that we have to do. So I certainly would have voted to go ahead with that had I been aware of that. But granted, if we're not using the pool this year, then it doesn't have to be done. But I think it should be a mandatory thing otherwise. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councilor McConnell. Councilor Burton, please.
Thank you. I too think that we should be looking at replacing the pool pump and filter. It should be mandatory for sure. Even if COVID continues, there is possibilities that we could have families rent time to use the pool, and rent the deep end to rent the shallow end. So I think it's important that we definitely look at replacing it and keeping it up to speed. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Other comments, questions on this section of the budget? So hearing some strong support from a couple members on the pool pump and filter. Everyone okay with that one? It seems like, I mean, that is a necessity if we're going to open. So that can probably be, barring any objections, I think we can probably safely move that to the mandatory list because it is clearly needed this year or next. And we're certainly all hoping that we can open the pool for this summer. So I think
Excellent.
we're good on that page, Mr. Armstrong. So please take it away.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. So next set of projects is community support projects. So the community improvement plan, the last 2 years, we've taken 75,000 from the fiscal policy reserve and moved it over to the community improvement plan. So at tomorrow's meeting, I believe we still have approximately $44,000 in the reserve if tomorrow's application is approved. And then the question is would you want to top that up by another $50,000 in 2021? The other one is the request from the Brockville General Hospital District Hospital Foundation. And that's to support the Under One Roof project that just opened recently. So we have paid $30,000 the last 3 years, and then the total request was for $30,000 over 10 years in each of those years. So certainly those two are still on the list, and we can go from there. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much again, Mr. Armstrong. So comments, questions on those two items? Councilor McConnell, please.
Thank you, Mayor Todd. As you're aware, I brought back the Brockville General Hospital Under One Roof project for review when we originally turned it down. I happened to be away when the vote was held. I know you were in favor of it. I was in favor of it. We took another look at it and we agreed to support it, but on a yearly basis. This is our yearly decision, and I'm certainly in favor of continuing with that payment. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Other feedback on those two items? Councilor Young, please. You're muted, Ray. Ray, you were muted on that. Sorry.
Thank you. I supported both of those in my submission. I think we should live up to our commitment to the Brockville General, and I know that, in my opinion, the CIP grant program has been a terrific success for the downtown.
Thank you very much, Councilor Young. Other feedback on those two items? So hearing support, but Councilor Shankar, please.
Oh, I just wanted to say, even though I didn't mark it as a priority, I do support it. When it has staff priority, I figured that that meant a lot to me. If the staff think that it's important, although, and I mean that in terms of the 1-ton truck, but these two programs, the CIP and the Brockville General Hospital, no doubt in my mind, we support that.
Thanks very much for that feedback, Gory. That's great. Any other comments from anyone on these two items? So it does sound like we've got pretty much general consensus support for both, and I certainly back both, as Councilor McConnell mentioned, on the BGH funding project, and also the CIP. Just sitting around that planning table with Chair Jansman and Councilor Burton, we've okayed a lot of good investments in the downtown. We have renovations happening on a great number of buildings in the downtown core. A lot of that has unfortunately been delayed with COVID, but it's great to see that there's been such fantastic uptake with those dollars. And I think Dana has brought that forward in the past, the amount of money that's been generated in the downtown from our contributions. And that's something that we should look at again as we move further into 2021 on that, because we've gotten back far more than we've invested. It's been a great source for rejuvenation of the downtown. So I think we're good on those two items, barring any comments to the contrary. So we can sort of slot those into the tentatively yes, because everything's tentative tonight, and move along. Mr. Armstrong.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. So the next group of projects is the Waterfront. And so as we go through, I think Mural at the beach, there was consensus there that a number of members of council support that. Wanted to make a note on the group. And so one member of council put forward that they would like to see the waterfront projects kind of grouped together, and perhaps a a dollar or pocket amount or an envelope amount be put towards those, and then we can start working and creating a plan towards those. The other that we'll get to in a moment are downtown projects. And so they're again kind of grouping them together, putting a pot of money towards them and being able to support them. So when I take a look at these, I think there was some consensus around Mural at the beach, adding docks for non-motorized watercraft. That would be, could be done at Centennial Park. Could be done perhaps at the boat ramp or at the marina. And really it's for people trying to get canoes or kayaks into the water. And at the marina, the current dock system is far too high for them to be able to easily get in and out of those. So it's a great tourist type of item, as well as being able to support residents that want to enjoy the river and those non-motorized type of opportunities. Trees on King Street, I think there was broad wanting to do that, trees on King Street and Riverwalk. So bringing back some discussion around that. Expansion of the beach, we've provided a number of options here. The one that we could start with is kind of the installation of a set of stairs that would be on the west side that would then allow people to get into the water on that side, but would also allow them to use the grassy area to be able to kind of use more area and spread out, do picnics, be able to dry off, get a little bit of shade, that type of thing. So certainly there's a number of options there. And then the connecting the two parking lots to the east of the marina to allow for overnight parking of boat trailers. And I think we've heard loud and clear from council that they would not want to entertain overnight parking of RV. But certainly that's an option there. It seems to be logical to be able to connect those two parking lots and people able to provide a better amount of parking. And that overnight parking would be by permit only. And so making sure that we're still able to control that. So that's what you're kind of seeing. And if I was to take an understanding of what I received in the feedback, then obviously the first three, as well as taking a look at a set of stairs and connecting the two parking lots seem to be things that there was broad support for. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Mr. Armstrong. I just wanted to note on the docks for the non-motorized watercraft and the idea of the stairs. Staff brought that to me a little while ago, and I understand there's been discussions with other members of council too. And it just seems like a fantastic idea. The number of people that use kayaks down there now, last summer was very heavily utilized for that purpose. And if you combine that with the set of stairs, you've actually got a way to sort of section off the swimming area as well, which is something that we've talked about at different times just to ensure the safety of swimmers down there and provide that buoyed area with sort of a border, which would work very well with the docks as well. And it's obviously a lot cheaper than those other options, which I still think that we should look at them at some point. Maybe there's a way to stage something there to take advantage of the added space because the beach is just so heavily used. I really want to thank staff for bringing that forward. So open it up for members of council this evening for further discussion on the waterfront projects. Okay, Councilor McConnell, please.
Thank you, Mayor Todd. There's a lot of money sitting there on an expand the beach projects. There's three of them that are, well, pushing $1 million if you wanted to do all three, which I guess not that many people want to do considering the response. But when I look at Kelly's Beach, I mean, from the time that I used to swim there when I was a kid, it's changed, but it hasn't changed. We used to have two docks out and you swam, you probably remember, you swam between the two docks. If you went on either side of the two docks, there was bricks, there was God only knows what over there. You were taking your feet, your life in your hands, so to speak. But what I've noticed in Brockville's Beach in St. Lawrence Park, and their beach is very similar to our beach, they have something that we don't have, and that is a floating sort of dock that is out at the point. that gives a kind of a break wall between the open water and the beach itself. And we have a similar point at the corner of Centennial Park there. And what I find missing that we used to have when I was a kid is that dock that you could run out and jump off the end, which is always a great thing if your kid jumping off of something, you know. And I'm wondering, rather than putting a stairway down, if we were to put a floating dock anchored out at that corner. It could be removed in the winter, but it would allow people to come flat off the grass, which would allow that area to be accessed as well. It would be a bit of protection for the beach itself as far as waves go. And it would add another dimension to the beach at, I don't think, a huge cost. We get into some of that aluminum decking with the, or aluminum dockage with the artificial wood on the top. Maybe with a ladder down somewhere too. I'd like us to look into that.
Yeah, I totally agree with that, Councilor McConnell, but I actually think we're sort of looking at, I think we're sort of talking about the same thing here with regards to the stairs would be not to get into the water, it would be more to get over the rocks. Because I think that's the concern is we've got a lot of people, and I've seen it quite a bit, people scrambling over the rocks there to get into the water to stay away from the crowded area on the sandy beach itself. And this would address that. So people would be able to get right into the water with their kayaks and also get in for swimming purposes, because we do have that really nice area, the grassy area up above with the tree and everything there. That's a very popular spot. And it's really become an area where people want to enter the water directly. But there is obviously a safety concern there going over all those the artificial break wall, basically, with all those concrete forms and the rocks. So yeah, no, I think we're basically talking about pretty much the same thing with that as in terms. And then we did talk about the idea of a raft at different times, like the old raft that you're mentioning that was there when some of us were kids down there. And the only concern that I did get back from staff when this came up a few years ago was just it's shallower down there now with regards to the sand, because we've put so much sand in there in recent years. It's been great because it's a incredibly comfortable beach now, and the sand has covered up a lot of the rocks and the old coal. But I think that's, so anyways, I think that's basically sort of the priority here to try to get people in. But the raft is just, I think there's some concern about how shallow it is there now. And we do have some really varying conditions in terms of the water heights. But I don't know, Matt, Nathan, if you wanted to comment on that and what you looked at there for, I think I'm describing that correctly with what you spelled out to me before.
Yeah, so I think there's a number of different options that we can take a look at. And so you're exactly right. I think we're trying to develop some way to get out and over those rocks. So it's a nice and safe way to be able to access all of that grassy area and really expand the usability without having to go all the way back around to the sandy part of the entry, as well as being able to, maybe it's a prime opportunity to be able to do that non-motorized watercraft docking and a number of other things. So, we're going to take a look at St. Lawrence Park, just as it was mentioned, and be able to provide a number of options that, it's a little bit different in that we have to get over the rocks, and there's a fairly big change in the amount of elevation between the St. Lawrence and Kelly's Bay and that west part, depending on how far you go towards that point. But certainly it's some type of combination very similar to that, and being able to make the most of it. So want to make sure that also wherever we do, if we do have docking, that if people are going to jump off of it, that it is definitely deep enough to be able to support that. So there's just a number of nuances of Kelly's Beach that we need to make sure that we cover. But you're exactly right. It's that concept, and then just taking over the fact of those height differences and a couple of other things. So.
Thank you very much, Mr. Armstrong. Lee, anything further on that?
No, the only other thing I would say is Nancy and I both have kayaks, and we put them in at the existing boat ramp. And quite frankly, we find that an excellent place to put them in and take them out. So I don't have a problem with launching my kayak in the existing facility.
Yeah, you have a very good point, well taken. This would be kind of a multi-use for swimmers and for people with kayaks and non-motorized craft. The one thing we'd have to watch if we do this, we do have some motorized vehicles that are in and out of there relatively frequently. So we'd have to make sure that we've got staff covering down there again next year, or this year, like we did last, to really keep an eye on that and make sure the jet skis and the Sea-Doos are kept out of there, because that would be one issue with any sort of docking facility there. Have to really make sure that it's just for non-motorized. So any other comments on these items? So I guess we're looking at the staff priority ones, are what we've really been talking about. I'm not hearing any appetite for the $1 million, or sorry, $500,000 for the other expansion options. But in terms of the trees, the docks for the motorized watercraft, well, obviously we're not finalizing anything, so we'll have to see things back. There's still some moving parts to this with regards to regulations, liability, Coast Guard, of course, have a real say on this too. So on the 5 items there with regards to staff priority, I didn't hear any objections to any of that. So can we general consensus put those on sort of the yes list or the maybe list for now and move along? Is everyone okay with that? Okay, sounds good. So Mr. Armstrong, please take it away with active transportation.
Thank you very much. So this one should be fairly short. So we do have all of these projects in one form or another included in the active transportation funding grant that we put forward to for the COVID-19 recovery to the federal government. And so the new shelter at Centennial Park, as well as Riverwalk Park, installation of solar lights, and then repairs to the Heritage Trail, as well as the other paths that run along the waterfront. I think the only question I would like to know is above the $100,000 that was for the grant, did we want to consider putting additional amount in for the installation of solar lights? So really that's the only question I have in this grouping, because most of it is covered by that grant proposal.
Thank you very much, Mr. Armstrong. Yeah, and I just would note to everyone, we don't have, I don't, at least as far as I know, we don't have final approval with regards to Parks Canada and the feds on that with the installation of the solar lights, but they were looking at that option along with the potential for other shared work down there in terms of development, limited development. I will say, I don't want anybody worried that we're looking to take that whole area for some sort of big development, but working together with Parks Canada and the federal government for work on that area to make sure that it's as amenable as possible to development in town and also use of our residents. So I guess that solar question is the big one. And the one thing I just want to toss in just before I open it up, I've been walking a lot down there lately, not to borrow Lee's thunder on that one, but I've been walking quite a bit down there the last 6-7 weeks, sadly enough. When we lost our elderly dog who couldn't do that walk anymore, we started walking a lot more, but I've really noted some of the condition issues down there. So I don't know how much more. It's going to be interesting to see just what the final costs are going to be here, because I think we have a huge section of that heritage pathway. A lot of our waterfront areas, those paths do need to be upgraded. There are a lot of low areas that freeze up and get waterlogged and so on. Staff has done an amazing job keeping that plowed and widened it even as well for walking during COVID, which is excellent. But there are some issues down there that I think really need some fairly seriously need to be addressed right now. So that's the only thing I would say. I'm a little cautious about where the money is here, and I certainly would be in support of spending more here in above and beyond the active transportation grant money, just to simply address this, because it's such a key part of the waterfront. But just my own personal soapbox on that one. I think we're going to have to really take a look at what that cost is going to be, and obviously that'll come back later. So open it up for discussion on those items, and I guess as Matthew mentioned, solar lights is probably the bigger one there, and I do see a couple of councilors did note that as a top priority, and I definitely agree with that as well. So you can toss me in as a third one. So open it up for discussion, comments, questions. Councilor Burton, please, and then Councilor Shankar.
Thank you. I think this is an excellent trail, and it does need some serious attention. There is, like you mentioned, Mayor Todd, some low spots and some holes here and there. But I think at this time, I think we should hold off on doing the solar lights and adding more money to this, because we don't know what the agreement can be, or if we can get an agreement. But in the near future, definitely look at adding some solar lights, because it is a definite attraction to our tourism aspect of our town. So, but definitely looking at and just addressing all those deficiencies down there at this time. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councilor Burton. Other comments, questions on the active transportation, and I guess specifically the solar, because that is the major point here. I had Councilor Shankar next, and then Councilor McConnell.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Matthew, you mentioned the number at 100,000. Is that how much we're looking to get in the active transportation improvement project?
That is correct.
Okay. So you also said then if you remove the solar lights, you'd be able to do everything on this list?
No, so including it in the list is the replacement of the gazebo, or adding 2 new shelters, and then doing repairs to the waterfront trail in various spots. And basically whatever was left over would go towards solar lighting. And
Okay.
so really the question is do we want to enhance that solar lighting project, or do we want to just see how far the $100,000 takes us to address all of the concerns and then make a decision at that point? We can always also bring this back once we have a better understanding of once the grant is approved and the numbers got a little bit more solid, and it doesn't necessarily have to be approved in our first round of budget for projects.
Okay. I don't know how much interlocking stone would cost, but I think 250 meters of it might cost a lot of money, although we would do it in-house.
Correct. And so right now in that grant proposal, it's just to make the repairs to the asphalt of those.
I see.
Whereas kind of doing those would be kind of an upgrade. And so I guess the question then becomes, how much do we repair and make better in this year? And obviously adding the 2 new shelters is a large cost. And then looking at in the future, what do we do for those particular walkways?
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Councilor Shankar. I think I had Councilor McConnell next.
Thank you, Mayor Todd. As far as the shelter, the gazebo in Centennial Park, we just roofed the one that's there. I don't see anything wrong with it. I think that has served us well for many decades, and I see it continuing to do the same job. The solar lights along the Heritage Trail, if we had a lot of money, I would say, yeah, sure, let's go ahead and do that. We don't have a lot of money. In the summer, when that gets walked on in the evening, it doesn't get dark till 9 o'clock. In the winter, I can't see anybody walking on it in the dark, down there in the dark. After supper, it gets kind of cold and windy. I don't think that's a priority item. And not only that, you can walk down along the river in Centennial Park, and it's quite nice in the dark with the lights that we have down there. But you can still feel fairly safe because there are houses in the immediate area. You get east of the marina, there's not anybody close as far as housing, and I'm wondering how many people, especially the older members of our community, would feel safe there walking night, even with lighting. So I don't think that's a priority item for us right now. The Waterfront trail from St. Lawrence Street to the water treatment plant, doing that with interlocking stone. The first thing we have to do is fix the actual rock that is along the waterfront there. We have to build up our actual waterfront that we have lost due to the high water. The water with the waves was actually washing right over the section at the south end of the Centennial Park. It undermined it in several locations. And to my mind, doing that in interlock would be lunacy. You're just going to wind up having it washed away. We're going to be continually repairing it. I would rather see us do it with a wider path with asphalt after we fix the or replace or add new stone down there, because you don't want heavy dump trucks and front end loaders and backhoes backing over a new pathway and fixing that later. So I think, to me, there's a lot to be looked at here that maybe just isn't obvious. Thank you. Oh, one more thing, if I can. The paving of Heritage Trail, there's 75 feet, I pasted off, that have to be replaced. Just simply have to be. It's badly waved, damaged, washed out, but you're going to have to do some work on the substructure there before you pave it. The rest of it, there's a couple spots that maybe could be fixed, but it's just that 75 feet that's in bad shape. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor McConnell. Councillor Young, please.
Thank you, Mayor Todd. The solar lights, I liked it as a priority. I'd like to remind council that when we went to the public 2 years ago and asked for some ideas from the public, putting lighting along that path came in first or second in the votes that it received. So if we're going to ask the public their opinion, we should listen to them. And I'd support putting solar lights there.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Councillor Young. Other comments, questions? Councillor Jansman.
I'm so grateful that Councillor Young brought that up, because that's exactly what I was going to bring up, that the public did promote that. And it's not it's such a wasted opportunity, because it would be used if it was lighted in the winter time. And we need to have it lit for safety reasons, and even for cosmetic reasons. Driving by, it would look so like the shelter, the gazebo down there that has the Christmas white lights on, looks so nice. So if you could visualize the whole path being done, it would just enhance the whole waterfront day and night and every season. So I'm certainly willing to put, I'm glad that our grant application was to include that. I'm glad that we're working with the feds to allow us to do that. And I would be willing to even exceed the 100,000 if need be to ensure that gets done. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Jansman. Other comments? I think we've gone. Councillor Ostrander, anything to add on this?
Well, I'm going along with the lights along the trail. It's been mentioned before. I think the previous two people mentioning the recreation master plan that we did in 2018 or whatever. And I agree with Councillor Jansman that we need to listen to the people. We took the time, they took the time as well to fill in the sheets of what they were interested in. And I think we need to look at that. And also I would ask your worship, in your conversations with Parks Canada, perhaps you could drop a hint about maybe a little bit of cost sharing in that. I don't know whether that's the proper venue or not, but I think they would certainly benefit from it from a tourism standpoint. And I think, we have to look at all angles there to get something done, particularly something that's of a fairly major project like that. Thanks.
Thanks, Mike. And that was, yeah, that actually was when I stressed partnership with Parks Canada. There was definitely indication that we can share some costs on this as well, because they're always looking to get their numbers up at Fort Wellington, and they've been great partners in the past. And the longer we can keep people in Prescott, the better for Parks Canada, and the better for us, of course. So we can get people into the downtown, into the waterfront, and so on. So I think the new regional superintendent's been very interested in possible ideas, and this was one of the key ones that I mentioned to her. Gory, did I see your hand up again?
Yeah, yes, please. I just wanted to know or mention something that, as much as we know, we are a central location for Augusta, for Edwardsburg, Cardinal, and Spencerville. They like to come to Prescott, whether it's to walk or whether it's to come for a meal or do recreation. So having said that, if we're gonna be over 100,000, I was wondering if we could dip into some of that municipal modernization money that we have, because we're doing this so that everyone can enjoy it, right? So that they can enjoy it at night, they can be safe when they're walking. It will look good. It will bring people to the area. Very much the same as like the Festival of Lights that they do in Brockville. We've all been to that, even though we didn't have to partake in paying for that. So it's just an idea that maybe we could find the money for it without dipping into tax money. All right, thank you.
Thank you, and excellent point there as well, because we do have, I think, a significant portion of that. I think we discussed this a couple of meetings ago. There's still quite a bit of that money left, and there are no conditions on the use of that, and so we could absolutely dip into it for things like this. But I think the biggest point of this is we're not saying yay or nay absolutely to anything tonight, and here, of course, we do have some questions on overall costing. There is, of course, the Parks Canada issue. We have to make sure that they're in agreement with this sort of thing down there. Although I will note, once more, that solar lighting, it's not as much with the excavation, that electrical lines, of course, that would be an issue down there. And also you've definitely got the attraction for people coming into town. And it's just always like noting this for, I think, 3 or 4 years in a row in the spring, every year I had someone would call me and leave a message on the phone, never a number, never a name, but just complaining about the look of that whole area. And it was always a comment on, you need to do more with it, and you need lights there in the evening because you're driving into town. It's beautiful waterfront, but boy, you need to do more. And and of course, I've heard a lot from residents on that walking down there that I do support the lighting, but I think we need to know more cost. The other item I just would, for a little bit of clarification on that new shelter gazebo in Centennial, that's not meant to replace the existing gazebo, which I would say is, as Councilor McConnell mentioned, it's a great structure and it served the area very well right at the beach. But this is more for something that would be a shelter for parents in particular that have their kids over at the splash pad and in the pool, because there is no real shelter in that area, so they could keep an eye on their kids in the pool and the splash pad. We just have that very small area connected to the new building with the splash pad. So this would be an addition there. But again, we're not saying yay or nay for anything tonight. We do need some more numbers on this. So if we can just, basic consensus that staff will look at these projects and we'll get a little more information on them as we move forward to finalizing the budget. Is everyone okay with that on these items this evening? Seeing no objections, so I think we're good on that and we can continue. Mr. Armstrong, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. So downtown projects, I think we did a previous plan for downtown that helped inform the design guidelines. I think we can take that, build upon it, really have a really good beautification plan that we would be able to bring forward as part of, as we look into 2022 and moving forward from there. So this is absolutely a BIA priority that they would like the town to undertake. And I think the first step is to putting money behind creating the plan. And then the second step is putting money behind actually bring it to fruition. So that is item number one. Then item number 2, obviously, is fixing the low part of the sidewalk in front of the Coast Guard, the east or west end of the building, as it starts to move towards St. Lawrence Street. And I think really what we would say there is raising the or relaying that interlock stone so that it reduces that low spot, and then angle it in a way that would naturally reduce the amount of pooling water. So fairly low cost in terms of being able to do that. Probably can do most of the work in-house and really address that pooling problem that we're seeing there.
Thanks very much, Mr. Armstrong. I will note the beautification plan did get the full support of the BIA at the last meeting last week. That's been something that they've really wanted to see go ahead for some time now, and there was a motion to that effect passed last week as well. So with that, I'll open it up, and I think it was Councillor McConnell that brought up that issue with the pooling on that south side, and it is an issue there on King Street. So Lee, if you wanted to make a comment there, because I know you did raise that before, and then I'll open it up to everyone.
Oh, thanks, Brett. This is one of my walking pet peeves again. I've chucked this one in here. I think it's either 3 or 4 years now that we've been doing this. And we have a pretty decent sidewalk from the east end of the town to the west end of the town, but it is really substandard in that particular location from the St. Lawrence Street going east, and it's not to the entrance of the Coast Guard building, it's just to the west end of the Coast Guard building. And the problem is the Coast Guard put in the sidewalk originally when they built that building back in the late 80s, but they ended it at their property, and then the town redid the sidewalk that was there to connect it with it. The problem is the sidewalk that the Coast Guard put in is of the same height as the roadway, that's King Street, and the sidewalk that the town put in dips down. So it's actually below the level of King Street, which is one of only 2 places. The other place is at the far west end. So you get runoff there. The plow fills it with snow. Because of the way it's sloped, if we get melding, it's underwater. If we get freezing, it's all iced up. It's not wide enough to begin with, and so in order to circumvent it, you have to go out and walk on the main street, and if there's cars parked there at the auto parts store, you're right out on the street. It's been a bad spot in King Street for many, many years. It was just poorly envisioned. And with the apartment buildings that we have down in King Street, and with Walker House, and with the park, and with the beach, and the health unit up there, that does get a lot of walking traffic and wheelchair type of traffic. So I think it's time that it got fixed, and it got fixed permanently. Thank you.
Very good point, Lee. Thanks very much for the background on that. So open it up for the rest of council for comments on the downtown projects. So not seeing a lot of added commentary on that. So barring anyone with a big objection, I think we can kind of slide this over to the tentative yes and move along tonight. Obviously, remind everyone once again, this isn't a final approval, but we'll just agree to move along on those items. So next up, recreation and culture projects, and back to Mr. Armstrong.
Very much, Mr. Mayor. So just going to focus on the ones that seem to receive the most support. So establishing a formal pathway between Mackenzie and Fishel and the grocery store and Canadian Tire, that's definitely on the work plan, and really it's incumbent upon the town to try and secure the land for that project. So it's something that we continue to work on, and hopefully will be successful in the course of 2021 of securing the land. In terms of the dog park, a number of councillors indicated that it should be a priority, and I think first step would be deciding on a location, and then second step being when exactly to install that. And thirdly, replacement of H-Dock at the marina. It suffered irreparable age-related issues last year. And so the plan is to put that back in and be able to come to council with the plan of how we're going to address infrastructure down there moving forward. There was only 2 other projects that received council support, and that was the rejuvenation of the high school tennis courts for pickleball, and then installing linkages and wayfinding for the walking paths, which we see as a part and parcel of our active transportation plan, and would hopefully be an outcome of the downtown beautification plan to be able to really focus on those things. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Armstrong. So open it up for discussion, members of council this evening. Councillor Jansman, please.
As you can see, nobody put the tennis facility to recreational complex. And just speaking for myself, I didn't do that just because, you know, it's still not official whether we're going to get the funding for the recreational complex, that kind of thing. But I would suggest to keep that up and highlighted for the next year or so, or whenever we know that that's a real possibility, because I think it would be a great idea to add it to the recreational complex. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Jansen. It's definitely something that has been kind of talked about in different areas of members of council and so forth. This has come up at different times, but I guess it is something we can look at. The disappointing part of all of this is we're still up in the air, of course, with the final grant funding on this in regards to the soccer fields, ball fields, and I know there are a lot of people in town that want to see us moving forward on all of this as quickly as possible, but we're sort of at loose ends on this one because we can't okay anything until we get that final green light with regards to the grant funding. So I would probably we basically have to toss anything we would look at doing with tennis facilities would kind of have to go into the we'll wait and see, unfortunately. I wish we could say more on that, and hopefully we will have some clarity on that soon. Councillor Young.
Thank you, Brett. I feel the same way about the dog park as I do about the lights on the walking path. However, I didn't vote for it because I believe it's going to be part of the arena site somewhere around there. And until we get a final placement of the water tower, the arena, the dog park, the ball fields and everything else, that I'm afraid it's going to have to wait another year. It's probably been, what, 6 years now? 5 or 6 years that someone came to us and requested a dog park and we all agreed to do it, and it's still not done. So anyway, I see it as part of the recreation project above the Prescott property.
And I guess that's the one question here. We could, that area is being utilized as a de facto dog park now, from what I understand. One of the old soccer fields. I haven't been back there myself, and I don't have a dog now to take back, unfortunately. But is there a way we could basically make it the official dog park for now? And I mean, it wouldn't be, I don't think it'd be a whole lot of work with regards to, we're talking signage, maybe some tweaks to the fencing. It certainly wouldn't be $25,000, but that would at least show that we're moving towards the final location and that it will be back in that area. So I guess that's one question there, because I'd really like to see something move forward as soon as possible. And then, of course, we've got to tie it into the greater recreation facility back there. Is something like that doable? I'll just ask staff, is that possible? We could sort of have had a middle range step in there to have a dog park without committing this amount of dollars to it.
We can certainly take a look at that. We want to make sure that whatever we put forward usually has to be fenced and secured, that sort of thing, but certainly we can take a look and report back to council.
That would seem to be a good middle ground alternative there. So I think we're all in favor of the dog park and have been for some time, but it just hasn't, sadly enough, worked out with regards to the land and the rec facility. Any other discussion on these items here? I mean, it's pretty easy to see the items that have staff support and council support with the numbers across here. So are we good on consensus for these items here and bringing back some more information on them? Or does staff want us to actually, some could actually be excluded tonight that would take some staff time. So I just want to raise that if there's anything. I mean, the pickleball issue, I mean, that's explore partnership. So we're not committing to dollars or anything, but is there anything here that staff wants greater clarity on to exclude even, so we're not taking up undue staff time for items that are maybe a little more pie in the sky or don't have full council support? Mr. Armstrong, is there any you want any added direction on this one?
No, I think kind of how I've been kind of doing is tick off the ones that there seems to be general support for those that there haven't been. So when we take a look at the next list, what I would suggest is that everything that we've talked about this evening that had some general support would be on kind of one list. There's still the list of everything else, and then it's doing that sober second look to saying, is there anything that should move between those lists? And so certainly there's nothing that precludes us from moving after the fact, but certainly I'm getting a pretty good feel for what that prioritization list will look like and where the pots of money I would be able to work with to find to support them.
Sure, that certainly sounds good to me. So if everyone's okay with that, we can move along.
All right, so just this is the last major list, and then there's just two other items that we have to address. So the first several items, all fairly low cost, grand total of I think $35,000 or $40,000. So there was some support, in particular for the backhoe quick attachments in the roofing structure between sea cans. So I would see that we would take a look to see where we could be able to support those kind of first 5 items, and then do that sober second look to be able to determine if those are things that we want to move forward with in 2021, or if they stay on the list and move forward in a future year for further deliberation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Again, Mr. Armstrong, open it up for comments, questions on the new equipment projects. Councillor Burton, please.
Thank you. I'm definitely in favor of helping make our staff's job easier. And if some of these items on the list that Mr. Armstrong mentioned is about $40,000 and it's feasible, why don't we definitely look into getting them all as much as we can? And like the saying goes, work smarter, not harder. So if everything is going on this list that's going to make their job a little bit easier, let's try to accommodate that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Burton. Sounds like a plan to me. Anyone else? Comments, questions on this page of the presentation tonight? Councillor Shankar, please.
Thank you. So I think along the same ways as Councillor Burton there, that I'm in favor of buying what we need for the operations department. I did have some questions about, are there other options available to some of the items? The custom covered box, for example, for wood chipping operations. I know that we're doing the wood chipping ourselves now instead of hiring it out. I just thought there might be other options than $12,000 for that. The other thing I noted, purchasing a genie lift, $120,000 is a big chunk of change. I know we talked a little bit about maybe combining with other municipalities to see if they wanted to purchase one together, or even looking at the used market. I know Nathan had a lot of luck selling selling some of our stuff on I think a website it was. Maybe there's something like that on that website, who knows? And lastly, the sound system for council chambers. I know there's been some public feedback on that, but I'd like to look into some other avenue instead of $15,000 for something like that. So anyway, those were my points. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Gory. Other comments, questions on this? I mean, I think the points are really well made, and we obviously have to, if there's any way to sharpen our pencil on some of these, obviously staff's going to do that. But they all sound like, they're all solid projects overall to move us forward for the reasons Councilor Burton mentioned. I think we've done a good job of supporting our frontline staff with equipment for a number of years now. We've got some good newer equipment right down the line, even including things like the street sweeper. So and we've done it in a cost-effective manner. So this is just is more of that good planning. So any other further specific comments here? So, okay, so I guess we're consensus on that one as well, but obviously we need a little more information in terms of options and so forth that will be coming forward before we finalize any lists tonight. So, Mr. Armstrong, sorry, because you got control of the screen here. We're pretty much I'll just back to you then for final stages here. I guess we're close to the end. Sorry, I can't look at it very readily right now with the full screen, but please go ahead.
So from previous iterations of the project budget, there was repaving behind Waterhouse. We were able to accomplish doing, I believe it was a portion of Mary Street and how it ran over to Sophia. And so I think that addressed most of the issue that was there. And then obviously there's the remainder of the parking lot, but the majority of the really bad part was addressed in the course of 2020. And then I believe it was Councillor Young put forward repairs to the Everett Street North, which we would contemplate as part of the 2021 repaving budget, which we're working on, and we'll be back to council in the early spring to discuss exactly where those options are. So I'm not sure there's anything that needs to be approved on this list, but just wanted to make sure that it wasn't missed.
Thank you very much, Mr. Armstrong. Any other comments here from council? Councilor McConnell, please.
Thank you, Mayor Todd. It's not exactly on topic, but the repairs to Edward Street North just kind of brought it to my mind because I keep meaning to bring it up. Every year, it seems, and this year was no exception, we wind up doing our sidewalk repairs in October and November. It was freezing out, and they were putting plastic over it to keep the cement from freezing. We walk on it all spring after the snow is gone. We walk on it all summer. We walk on it in the fall when they're in poor condition, and we replace them late into the fall, it seems, every year. And the same thing goes with an awful lot of our asphalt repairs. Can we not do this work in the spring of the year and have it done before, I would say, the 1st of July, so that for the bulk of the summer, the people are walking on better sidewalks and driving on better pavement?
So certainly through you, Mr. Mayor, we can deal with that with our contractor. However, when it comes to paving, things like that, it's really up to when we're able to get the machinery to be able to do it. When it comes to sidewalks, definitely we were able to accomplish most of our sidewalk work in August, September this year. There was the late addition of doing the corner of, I believe, Water Street and Edward. Actually, we were able to determine exactly which corner we were going to do and be able to get that into this year. But certainly point is taken, and we will make every attempt to move it up in the year.
Thank you.
Very much, Lee. Thanks, Matt. So any other comments on this portion of the presentation? So seeing none, so everyone does see the next steps outlined here. So we'll be back with this on March 1st to look at some funding sources for some of these priority projects. We obviously did have some suggestions on that this evening with regards to modernization funding, and staff will come back, of course, with other options here as well. And we'll have probably some firmer numbers with regards to some of the items as well. So we're all good, I think, with there. And the other thing I guess we haven't really commented on too much tonight, but it was noted on a couple of the projects is the service delivery review. And some of that is, of course, tied up with working with Augusta in some areas. And we haven't had that meeting of that subcommittee group that we did form. We were looking at setting something like that up. And Matt, the members, our members, it's Gory, myself, the counselors, are they not? So that'll be interesting going forward there. We've got some great work happening with Augusta behind the scenes, staff to staff, I know, and it'd be good to expand that however we can to enhance our service delivery and also save a few bucks for our residents and ratepayers in both Prescott and Augusta. So be good to get some more details on that as we move forward too. Matt, any final comments here before we move on?
Oh, thank Council very much for going through that. It was certainly a fulsome discussion, and I certainly appreciate that. And I think it gives us a good approach to being able to move this forward. Thank you.
That's fantastic. Any final words from members of council this evening? Good to see we've got general consensus on things, but obviously we need more numbers and to finalize some stuff. Councillor Burton, please.
Thank you. I did want to thank staff for going through this list and council as well, because I think it's important to make sure that we're all on the same page when it comes to our town. And I think we are moving forward in making our town a little bit better. So thank you to staff and council.
Absolutely. Thanks very much, Councillor Burton. Any other comments before we close this off? Sounds like we're good. So again, thanks everyone for the very good discussion this evening. It's good to see we're all pretty much on the same page with our priorities moving forward, and good for the town as well. We've always tried to be as transparent as possible when it comes to putting the dollars back into actual services and facilities that people utilize every day. And I think we've done an excellent job of that for a very many number of years now with regards to minimizing the administrative cost and making sure that tax dollars go directly to services and amenities that people utilize. So good to see we're maintaining that focus, and I look forward to continuing the discussion in a couple of weeks when we get back to this, and we at that point will be very close to coming up with some final decisions on this year's budget. So thanks again to staff for bringing that forward, and thanks to all of council for the great discussion on these items tonight. So we'll move on, and that does take us out of item 12 tonight. So we're on to 13 resolutions, nothing this evening, nothing also under 14 bylaws, 15 new business. Not that I want to slow the meeting down because we should be getting to a break shortly, and we do have a probably significant closed session tonight that'll take a little time. But I did want to note something just under new business, and if we could have staff maybe look at an item. We've discussed this before, and I know we just passed the parking bylaw, but something that I do think needs to be looked at are the two parking spots at the south end of Edward Street, right in front of Bobby's. I think we did take one of those spots out a few years ago, but we still have two spots there that are very close to the corner. And especially when we see today is a good example again, but this is something I've wanted to raise for a while now. When people are parking there and going into the restaurant, and I don't want to discourage anyone from takeout at Bobby's because we want to support all our businesses, but they're parking so close to the corner there. And that is a pretty much blind corner when trucks and so forth are turning right going north on Edward. And with the snowbanks and everything, they're parking quite a ways out. I do think this is something we should probably take a little look at with regards to staff and just distance from the corner. If we maybe took one spot out, I mean, I just think it needs to be addressed because we've had I've seen close calls there. We've had trucks go up over the curb many times and hit the pole there as well. So adding those vehicles there, and especially when you have cars in the southbound lane coming down, you've got a very, very narrow space for turning. So if everyone's okay with that, I would just like to ask staff just to take a look at that for a future meeting. Doesn't have to be anything urgent, but I think it is something that we do need to take a peek at, just because of the amount of traffic going around that corner. Councillor Young?
It's complicated when they park illegally. If they stay to the 2 parking spots, it's not that bad. But if they park the 3rd car there, that's what causes the problem.
Yeah, I think that definitely exacerbates it, but I think even the 2 are actually getting awfully close there now, especially when you see the transports making that turn going north. And unfortunately, we do seem to have a fair number of those these days. Noticed a couple even earlier today, and the snow just made it much more problematic. So if everyone's okay, I'd just like to ask staff to maybe take a look at that at some point, and perhaps even engage OPP, TSOs could take a look at it as well, just with regards to see if they've noticed anything. So if everyone's okay with that, that was just the one item of new business I just did want to mention tonight. Does anyone else have any new business to bring forward this evening? Seeing none, so that's 16 notices of motion. Does any member of council have a notice of motion to bring forward tonight? Seeing none, mayor's proclamations under 17, nothing tonight. And that does take us to 18, the closed session. And we will take a 10-minute break before we move into the closed session, give everyone a chance to stretch their legs, because we are at the 2.5 hour mark right now. So recommendation is that council, for the closed session, recommendation is that council move into closed session at we'll say 8:45 p.m. To address matters pertaining to 18.1 HR matters. That's under section 239D of the Municipal Act, labor relations or employee negotiations, and 18.2 purchase and sale under section 239C of the Municipal Act. That's a proposed or pending acquisition or disposition of land by the municipality or local board, and 18.3 board appointments. That's under section 239B of the Municipal Act, personal matters about an identifiable individual, including municipal or board employees. And we've also added 18.4 there, approval of the closed session minutes. And that the CAO, treasurer, clerk, interim director of operations, and deputy clerk remain in the room. Could I have a mover, please? Moved by Councillor McConnell, seconded by Councillor Ostrander. Any discussion? Seeing none, I will call the question. All in favor? Motion is carried, folks. We'll take a break till roughly 8:45, and then we'll resume the meeting. So we'll take a break now and turn off the YouTube. Thank you.
Night, everyone.